UFO TV specials, idol rivalries, world-changing gadgets, tasty food, tragedy, drama. 1982 in Japan had it all. But 1983 arguably kicked it up a notch. This was the year when Nintendo unleashed the video game console. The year when Mickey Mouse learned how to say konnichiwa, and the year when Japan gave us a wristwatch that was tough enough to survive being run over by a frickin' truck. A tiny little Japanese truck with a hilarious name. And beyond all that, political and cultural losses, long-running TV favorites ending, and so much more. So, what kind of tech magic did Japan cook up in year 4 of the 1980s? What made the nation laugh, cry, and spend their hard-earned yen? And maybe most importantly, how the heck am I going to sneak in yet another Matsuda Seiko reference this time around? Well, my name is Aniki, this is Timeline Japan, and the year is 1983. The subscribe and like buttons are right there, and if you really like what I do, that Patreon link is waiting for you too. But now you know what time it is. Ikimashō. Let's do this. Just 4 days into the new year, 2 young female wrestlers lit up Tokyo's Korakuen Hall. The venue hosted an all-Japan women's pro wrestling event that night. The main card, Jaguar Yokota versus the American Judy Martin. But the true landmark moment that would go down in Japanese pro wrestling history that night actually came during one of the undercards when Lioness Asuka and Nagayo Chigusa squared off in the ring. For 18 minutes, these two pushed each other to the absolute limit in a fight that wrestling fans in Japan still talk about to this day. In the end, it was Lioness Asuka that took home the win, yet the result mattered much less than the sheer electricity that the two had created together in the ring that night, and viewers who sensed that this wasn't just another bout were proven right later that same year, when Asuka and Chigusa joined forces as the Crush Gals, a tag team that would go on to dominate Japan's women's pro wrestling scene for the rest of the 80s. Their rivalries with groups like the Atrocious Alliance, their unavoidable presence in Japanese television, and even a fairly successful pop music career turned them both into icons. By the mid-1980s, the Crush Gals had become the role models for droves of teenage girls across the nation. Pro wrestling? Now that's about as 80s as it gets. Crush Gals, they embodied the very best of that era of the sport when it came to the land of the rising sun. 5 days later, a tragic death in politics. Nakagawa Ichirō, leader of a major faction within the Japanese Liberal Democratic Party, was found dead in the bathroom of his Sapporo hotel room. He was just 57. The cause of death was listed as a heart attack, but it was soon revealed to have been self-inflicted. Not everyone believed the official story though. His unusually fast cremation, only 2 days later, raised eyebrows. Rumors swirled about ties to the KGB, crushing financial debts from campaign spending, even health issues from liver cancer. Some whispered darker theories involving his wife. But in the end, none of these claims could be substantiated, and the official verdict remains to this day. Death by his own hand. Still, Nakagawa's sudden and controversial passing left a scar on Japanese politics, and questions about his death linger even today. Then, on Valentine's Day, Suzuki had a special gift for Japanese car enthusiasts. The Mighty Boy, a tiny little 550-kilogram truck that honestly makes this list for the name alone. It's a so-called K-car, meaning it's so tiny you would literally get government tax breaks just for owning it, yet Suzuki decided to go with the name Mighty Boy. Really, there's nothing especially groundbreaking about the car itself, but I mean, come on. Mighty Boy. Only in Japan. 10 days later, on February 24th, Japan National Railways said goodbye to a true post-war workhorse when train number 624M running the Ida line from Mikawakawai to Toyohashi Station became the last ever journey for the 80 series of trains. First rolled out in 1950, these were the first Japanese electric passenger trains designed for long-distance runs over 100 kilometers. For the next 33 years, the 80 series carried countless passengers and helped prove that Japan could modernize its railway system on a massive scale. Much more than just transport, it became a symbol of recovery after the devastation of Japan during World War II, and its design also helped pave the way for the country's crown jewel of engineering, the Shinkansen. Today, it's pretty easy to take for granted the sheer luxury of getting absolutely hammered on some strong zero while sitting on a comfy modern Japanese bullet train, but let's not forget that it was pioneers like the 80 series that made it all possible in the first place. So, February 24th, 1983 marks the end of an era and the quiet retirement of a true rail legend. Thank you for your service. March 24th brought Japan something brand new in the world of home entertainment. The very first TSUTAYA store. What began as a small bookstore in Hirakata, Osaka Prefecture quickly pivoted towards the booming market of video rentals. Now, back then in the early 80s, VHS tapes were ridiculously expensive to buy. Renting a VHS tape, on the other hand, now that made perfect sense. Want to grab the latest Gundam film along with a cheeky adult video to create a truly magical night? TSUTAYA was your one-stop shop. The model worked so well that just 2 years later, the company behind it formed the Culture Convenience Club, or CCC, to expand nationwide, and by the late 1980s, TSUTAYA had become one of Japan's preferred places to go for movie, and later even music and video game rentals. Meanwhile, the chain's membership card became a near ubiquitous item in Japanese wallets, and CCC later went on to launch the T-Point system, one of the country's biggest loyalty programs. Now, while rental culture has now largely faded even in Japan, back in the 80s and 90s, TSUTAYA was more than just a store. It was a cultural hub that shaped how an entire generation of Japanese experienced entertainment. Then in April, Casio introduced a watch that could take a beating and still keep ticking. The DW5000C, the very first G-Shock watch. That name stands for gravitational shock, by the way, and the watch was designed with so-called triple 10 durability in mind. That means survive a 10-meter fall, resist water pressure up to 10 bar, and last 10 years on a single battery. Now, the story behind the G-Shock's inception is simple but amazing. Engineer Ibe Kikuo came up with the idea in 1981, after bumping into a pedestrian, dropping a mechanical watch that his father had given to him, and immediately breaking it. Definitely not a Casio product. Determined to make something unbreakable, he and his 3-person team went through nearly 200 failed prototypes before inspiration struck from the side of a rubber ball at a playground. The result was the Casio G-Shock DW5000C. Rugged, shock-absorbing design that became the basis for one of the most successful watch lines in history. Initially, G-Shocks were marketed for their toughness, but they quickly evolved into a global fashion statement, with hundreds of models released and over 150 million units sold worldwide. From the construction side to the runway, the G-Shock must be the most reliable piece of fashion that money can buy. Thanks, 1983 Japan.
コマーシャルタイムです。
New Life Now.
スリムになったら楽しくなった。私のビデオ。得意技。いろ。ハイライトシーンはファインスローとクリーンスチルで。わお！ビデオは薄く。シャープマイビデオ。
On April 15th, 1983, the happiest place on Earth finally came to Japan when Tokyo Disneyland, the very first Disney park outside the United States, opened its doors to the public. The dream of bringing Disneyland to Japan had actually been brewing for decades at that point. Way back in the late 1950s, there were already talks of building a Disneyland in Nara Prefecture. That plan fizzled out, and it wasn't until the late 1970s that the idea was revived, with Chiba Prefecture near Tokyo chosen as the perfect site to lure in crowds from the Japanese capital. By the time the gates finally swung open, the hype was unreal. Newspapers, television, and word of mouth had drummed up massive anticipation, and it delivered. Tokyo Disneyland blended the best of what American parks had to offer, but also sprinkled in some touches to suit its new Japanese audience. So it was an instant smash. Millions of visitors poured in that first year, shattering expectations and cementing it as Japan's ultimate theme park. And with Mickey Mouse cheerfully greeting guests with a hearty konnichiwa, the Disney magic had now officially gone global. One of Japan's greatest boundary pushers passed away on May 4th at just 47 years old. Terayama Shūji was a visionary who seemed to master every art form he ever touched. Poet, playwright, filmmaker, photographer. Basically, if it involved creativity, Terayama was probably pretty damn amazing at it. One of his most famous works, the 1971 experimental film Throw Away Your Books, Rally in the Streets, was a scathing metaphor for Japan's slide into materialism, also making him seem a bit like a prophet in hindsight. Summing up his entire career in just a minute though, almost impossible, but his death from liver cirrhosis in 1983 certainly dealt a huge blow to the Japanese creative scene. Thankfully, his legacy lives on, both in a museum dedicated to him in Aomori and in the countless artists that he inspired, even long after his passing. Then, just a few days later, on May 8th, politics took a slightly quirkier turn. By 1983, Japan's economic miracle was roaring along, and it was fueled largely by the classic, loyal, tireless, chain-smoking, white-collar salaryman. You know the type. But while the salaryman kept Japan's economy afloat, the country's tax system often worked against them. Enter the Salarymen New Party, a political party created by salarymen for salarymen. Led by Aoki Shigeru, the party's mission was simple: make taxes fair for overworked office workers. Slogans like "Take payday frustrations to the diet" and "Make suit expenses tax deductible" equal parts frustration and satire. And surprisingly, this was more than just a gimmick. The party actually won 2 seats in the June 1983 House of Councilors election, pulling nearly 2 million votes. But despite their pretty admirable goals and cheeky charm, the existing Japanese tax system proved immovable, and by 1989, the party had lost most of its momentum. If nothing else, Salarymen New Party serves as a reminder that even in bubble-era Japan, life wasn't all champagne and caviar, or sashimi and sake. Especially if you were one of the little guys with a white collared shirt and an alcohol/smoking problem.
やっぱり上南大学の人ですか？違うよ。結婚するんですか、その人と。
あの子、初めからできない子じゃないと思うんですけど。
親はみんなそう言うんですよ。
A much healthier, though arguably just as addictive way to unwind arrived on July 15th, when Nintendo unleashed a white and red plastic gaming revolution with hardwired controllers. The Famicom. At just 14,800 yen, or around $62 US, Nintendo's first home console launched with 3 games, all ports of popular Nintendo arcade hits: Donkey Kong, Donkey Kong Jr., and Popeye. A rather modest launch by today's standards, but a banger lineup of launch titles back in 1983. Early sales were strong too, 500,000 units in just 2 months, but there was one small issue. Every single one of these units had a hardware flaw that caused frequent crashes during gameplay, which didn't exactly help when you're trying to smash your poor child's high score on Donkey Kong. But Nintendo made a big decision, recalled the lot, fixed the problem, and from that point on, the Famicom was ready to rocket towards legendary status. By late 1984, Japanese stores couldn't keep it on the shelves, and when third-party developers like Namco and Hudson Soft started joining the Famicom party, the Famicom became absolutely unfreaking stoppable. Rebranded as the Nintendo Entertainment System or NES in the United States, it famously saved the American video game market after that infamous crash. And with franchises like Mario, Zelda, Metroid, Dragon Quest, Final Fantasy, Mega Man, and countless more debuting on its hardware, July 15th, 1983 stands as one of the most important days in gaming history, let alone the 80s. And how couldn't it be? With iconic slogans like No, hold on.
Now you're playing with power.
That's the stuff. While the Famicom was bringing the joy of console gaming into Japanese living rooms, Japanese television was saying goodbye to an iconic program. On September 25th, Nippon Terebi aired the final episode of its legendary talent show, Star Tanjō. Since 1971, the show had a hand in launching some of Japan's biggest music stars of the 70s and 80s. Nakamori Akina, Yamaguchi Momoe, Pink Lady, they all got their big break here. Star Tanjō was open audition, giving anyone a shot at fame, provided they survived the brutal preliminary rounds to reach the televised finals. And for that final episode, over 2 million hopefuls applied. The finale featured not only competition though, there were heartfelt farewells and expressions of gratitude from past winners, as well as a video message by the show's first host, Hagimoto Kinichi. Fans of the show begged for a revival pretty much as soon as Star Tanjō called it quits, but despite rumors of a reboot and the occasional anniversary special, Star Tanjō was well and truly done. But over its 12-year-long, 619-episode run, it created a galaxy of stars few shows could ever match. It was the rare kind of show that actually delivered on its title. Star Tanjō. A Star is Born.
コマーシャルタイムです。
涼しいですね。あったかですね。パワフルですね。冷暖二役。役者が違うね。ガス FF エアコン。
これは世界一のサッカー選手になることを夢見てひたむきにゴールを目指すサッカー少年の物語である。
Month, October. Day, the 21st. Location, well, Japan, obviously. What did you expect? That day, Mitsubishi released the ML8000, Japan's first computer built on a brand new MSX architecture. Developed as a collab between Microsoft and ASCII Corporation, MSX aimed to standardize Japan's fragmented home computer market, and soon, nearly every Japanese electronics giant, Sony, Panasonic, Toshiba, Sharp, Fujitsu, JVC, jumped on board. As for what MSX actually stands for, no one knows for sure. Some say Microsoft Extended, others Matsuda Sony, or even machines with software exchangeability. Whatever the meaning, MSX became a modest success in terms of home computing and an absolute cornerstone of Japanese PC gaming. While Nintendo's Famicom was still locked to first-party titles, MSX systems boasted third-party hits. Hudson Soft, for example, came in swinging with the first Bomberman. But the king of MSX, and especially the MSX2, was undoubtedly Konami. Castlevania, Parodius, as well as the first couple of projects headed by a young man called Hideo Kojima, all found a home on MSX computers in the 1980s. MSX eventually expanded into other regions as well, but out of the estimated 9 million MSX machines sold worldwide, about 7 million are estimated to have been sold in Japan. And while it may be obscure in the West, its impact on Japanese PC gaming is undeniable. Oh, and Matsuda Seiko advertised Sony MSX computers, so, you basically had to buy one whether you wanted to or not. Wait, what if the MS stands for Matsuda Seiko? But then what does the X stand for? Drop your theories in the comments, I guess. November brought less silicon, but significantly more horsepower when on the 13th, a 3-year-old nickering fella by the name of Mr. CB became a legend. Mr. CB, for your information, was a horse. A Japanese horse. A Japanese race horse. And he was quite special, because on that fateful day, he won the Ikimashō at Kyoto Racecourse, clinching the prestigious Triple Crown of Japanese horse racing. He'd already won the Satsuki Show at Nakayama and the Tokyo Yushun, and with his final victory, he became just the 3rd horse in Japanese history to sweep all 3. The CB in his name, unlike MSX, is actually pretty easily explained. It stands for Jigida Bokucho, the farm where he was born, and over his career he earned more than 400 million yen in prize money before being named 1983 Horse of the Year and later entering the Japan Racing Association's Hall of Fame. What a stud. Literally. And to close out 1983, we got a city pop album that, for some reason, I always expected to have been a summer release. Anri's 6th studio album Timely, that's timely with not 1 but 2 exclamation marks, hit Japanese store shelves on December 5th. One of many collaborations between Anri and producer Kadomatsu Toshiki, Timely sold more than 500,000 copies over the following year, a success that came partly off the back of the wildly successful single Cat's Eye, which also served as the opening song for the 1983 anime of the same name. But beyond being a bestseller, Timely is now also considered one of the quintessential albums for those looking to get into some city pop that transports you right back into bubble-era Japan. My personal song recommendations, probably Shyness Boy and I Can't Stop the Loneliness. Because, I consider myself somewhat of a shyness boy, and I too can't stop the loneliness. But in all seriousness, you should probably give this thing a listen. It's smooth as hell, it's catchy as hell, it's 80s as hell. And that cover art, iconic. And that is the perfect note to end yet another iconic year on. 4 down, 6 more to go as we approach the middle of our favorite decade. And speaking of favorites, allow me to introduce you to my favorite Patreon supporters, which is literally every single one of you, including the Hockey Gentleman, Khalid Lepta, Xoyabu, Javier Soravia, Steve Matsui, Turam, RK0, Todd, Hajime no James, Utku Hussein Kaya, Sierra DC, White Gildan, Justin Down, Yoko the Space Whale, Cats and Soup, Chart B-Man, Ben Herodine, Metal Mama, T-Bird, Tom Ericus Prime, Boo Boo Cakes, JR Horse, and Ian Farmer. And to everyone else who joined me for 1983, thank you so much for watching, and as always, I guess I'll see you next year. じゃあ、またね。